Hello and welcome to Basiltov, the courage and creativity of ADHD.
I'm
I'm
Ellen.
Jen,
And I'm Annette.
and today we've got a real interesting topic, one that's been in the news a bit lately and has been a problem for actually a really long time, literally decades. Um, it is the faking of ADHD as a disorder, as a whole ass
hmm
problem. So if you've got ADHD out there and you're anything like me, you're probably wondering, why in the fuck would someone want to do that? Pretend to have ADHD? Because why would somebody want to be neurodivergent in a neurotypical world? It is really, really uncomfortable. It's like it's unbearable for some of us
hmm
sometimes. Like, why would anybody want to fake this? So, we've got a lot of information about why that is, what that does to neurotypical people, what it does to neurodivergent people, the consequences of all this stuff, and of course, why it's happening. So, and we've got some really great, Annette's got some really great statistics about all this stuff. It's really fascinating. So I believe one of the big reasons that people that people would fake ADHD symptoms is to get the drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, one of the more obvious ones. I remember going to undergrad and having people talking about buying pills off of other people, professors talking about it, talking about using them as essentially study aids or testing aids for when finals came along. And, they were trying to do something about it on campus. And that was, geez, over a decade ago that I was hearing about that kind of thing. So I know that it's been a real problem for a long time. But Annette, you were saying that it's become so common that it's like a 1 in 4 thing.
Well, when I was thinking about doing this topic, I had come across an article, an NBC article that said 1 in every 4 adults are faking ADHD, who are diagnosed with ADHD.
Wow.
And it says 22% of adults in a study that they had done, claimed they suffered from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and tried to skew the test results to make their symptoms look worse, according to a new report based on the medical records of 268 patients and published in the Journal of Clinical Neuropsychologist.
So they got these
So,
people to admit that
I
they lied on the test, basically?
yeah, well, I mean, I guess
That's
so.
interesting.
I think that it's really hard to keep up a lie for your entire life if you're not ADHD and you are seeking it for you know prescriptive purposes. Once you're not if you become addicted to it, it's obvious that you don't have ADHD. I mean, that is a clear sign that you do not have ADHD if you become
Right.
addicted to Adderall or
hmm
Ritalin or any of the other stimulant drugs,
Yeah.
amphetamines that
Yeah.
are prescribed for ADHD. It's pretty clear that you
Uh-huh.
don't have ADHD. I
hmm
mean, here is your sign. And so
Yeah.
I think that this problem basically stems from the fact that, to diagnose ADHD, as we know, because we've all struggled to even get our own diagnosis, but it was more readily prescribed, and methamphetamines, amphetamines were given to people a long time ago who just said they couldn't focus or they were tired or suffered from that kind of thing, and they gave them superpowers basically. But then with ADHD, there's still a lot unknown about ADHD and how do you properly diagnose someone. And it depends on what clinic you go to. It depends on, is that person an expert in ADHD or are they not? And just because you have a medical pad that you can write a prescription on doesn't mean that you actually know what to look for. And I was speaking to a friend of mine who's a doctor, and he was saying that people had come in seeking medications or things like that in a clinic that he had worked in. But he himself, as a physician, is not specifically trained in what to look for ADHD.
Mhm.
And so if you have that kind of system, then, gaming the system, if you fake your symptoms and come, for better or for worse, guys, there's so much more information going around the internet these days about ADHD and what the symptoms are and what to look for, which is
Mhm.
helpful for those of us who were never diagnosed and always thought that there was something wrong with us, and the shame that came with that, to kind of go, oh, oh, well, maybe I should go get that checked out. But on the other side, it's also information for people who are seeking
Yeah,
drugs.
and there's no way to tell. There's no way for a doctor to just physically examine someone and say, "Yep, they've got ADHD." It just all depends on what the
Yeah.
patient
Yep.
tells them. So if they know exactly all the right
Yep.
things to say, I mean, doctors, they're gonna believe them most of the time, I imagine. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Although sometimes they start refusing to prescribe altogether, and that's
yeah,
one of the unfortunate consequences for people with ADHD, and it's a prime example of what's happening in my area right now, where there's a shortage of mental health care. So it can take you a year to a year and a half to even get yourself a counselor around here. You can go in for psychological testing, however, where you basically sit down with a piece of paper and fill out a short assessment. And if your answers in the little boxes seem to match an ADHD diagnosis, then they'll diagnose you. However, they don't have a clinical history with you.
mm-hmm,
So this is how people have been gaming the system, is seeking out these little inventory tests and then being like, "Oh, look, I've got ADHD," because they know all the right
mm-hmm,
answers. And it's made doctors around this area extremely hesitant to prescribe any kind of ADHD medication, not just stimulants, but
wow,
non-stimulants too. So so once somebody says my son or daughter has ADHD, or I think I have ADHD, you instantly get like this look like, "Oh,
mm-hmm,
really?" Like it's almost like, "Well, prove it." And when one of my kids needed to re-up their ADHD medication and we had to go to a new doctor in our new town, it was like I had to show proof, letterhead proof from the counselors that we've been working with that he's been diagnosed for as long as he
mm-hmm,
has been. So, like, I had to jump through hoops, even though we already have a diagnosis, even though his ADHD is legit and you can
yeah,
tell, um, you, we still had to jump through a bunch of of hoops just to get his medication represcribed. And I had kind of a back and forth initially with my own physician about it until
yeah.
she was like, "Okay, well, we'll trust you this time and we'll see how your behavior goes. But also, we're seeking non-stimulants, so it's a little easier for
Yeah,
us
that
to
was
get
my
it."
experience too. It just
Um,
depends so much on the healthcare provider, specifically who they are, their experience. I had one
yeah.
psychiatrist that I remember I just mentioned to her, maybe it'd be good for me to try a medication for my ADHD. And she was like, it's really concerning to me that you're asking about pills. And I was just like, what? I thought that's how we
Oh,
treated this shit. Like, what else am I supposed to do? They don't really have a lot of tips on
yeah,
diet and exercise or, lifestyle adjustments. So why else are we here? I thought we were here to talk about pills. But finally the
right.
third psychiatrist I went to, I finally clicked with, and she was like, "Oh yeah, of course, yeah. What do you want to try?" So,
Yeah.
I think it's so
Yeah.
hard and frustrating to go through doctor after doctor if you're, or if you're looking for therapy. It's hard to find a good therapist that you click with too. But I think that's just normal. It just takes a while sometimes.
Yeah, and I have a theory that this could be wrong, but I do have a theory that people who are seeking ADHD medications for recreational use, for
Yeah.
academic use, I think they tend to go through general practitioners more than they or clinics rather than going through an actual
Oh, yeah, that makes
psychiatrist
sense. Yeah.
because I
Mhm.
also I have another friend who is a psychiatrist, and I was asking my friend about, this topic too. And my friend said it's actually much easier to spot people who are seeking it for recreational use because they tend to score higher on ADHD evaluations.
Oh, so their ADHD
Oh
looks
boy.
worse than it is, or than it probably could
Yeah,
be.
they
Like it's
make
like
it
too
Yeah.
look
bad,
worse.
like too unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that stinks. Because then somebody like me who legitimately has really bad ADHD, they're, like, not gonna
Yeah, what
believe
the fuck?
that I even have it because it's
These
too
people are
But
ruining
bad.
it for
But
us.
I think you have a lot of I think you also have a lot of nonverbal behaviors that a psychiatrist can look at and be like, you have
Yeah, it
Oh,
seems
ADHD.
yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you have to worry about that.
wish there were
No.
But
more ADHD
yeah, it was
specialists.
really
If there were
interesting.
more ADHD specialists, then they'd be able to
Yeah.
see through that and realize, I think this person has
Mhm.
something else going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were getting my daughter, like, it was her first appointment and getting evaluated, and she's got her second one coming up here, like, next week, and on her first run, the psychologist doing the inventory was just watching her, and she's acting, just like I did when I
Mm-hmm.
was her age, and he's watching her, and he's like, "So, you move around a lot?" She's like, "No, I'm just feeling a little lazy today," and he goes, "This is lazy?" And,
That's funny.
so yeah, it was really funny how it came out. But yeah, like, so there are some of us who have bad ADHD that if you're an ADHD specialist like he is, he, can see it right away. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you're just sitting there, without any of the verbal or nonverbal signs of ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
then you're obviously going to be up the creek if you're
Yeah.
scoring
I
super
don't know
high
how it
on
is
an
now, but I think for a while there were a few companies where you could get an ADHD diagnosis online, and maybe they're still available. Yeah, but I wonder
Oh
if
my
that's
god, that sounds like
That's
a terrible idea.
yeah, I know.
horrifying.
I mean, I understand, like, after the pandemic, we kind of needed to like all meet on Zoom and not in person, but it's still, I think some of those may have been shut down, but yeah, that was
Well, and
happening.
I think
Wow.
anybody who gives you an ADHD diagnosis on one appointment is also full of
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
Um, you really have to see repetitive behaviors in people to be able to recognize the
Mm-hmm.
patterns. Uh, and also, we mask, and that's one thing to look out for. But also, it's really difficult for neurotypical people to mask as an
Yeah.
ADHD person for long periods of
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
time. So, you know,
Yeah. This mask took me decades to curate.
Yeah,
You can't fake my
that's
it's
right.
condition
hard.
just by trying for a
They
week.
think they can just throw together a mask.
It's
That's right.
unbreakable.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, theirs is paper mache. Ours is like
that's
crafted
right.
porcelain.
Yeah, it was my
Yep. Yep.
family doctor that I had
Exactly.
known for about 4 years. I think she was the one that first was like, "I've known you long enough to think that you might have some ADHD going on here." But she wanted me to see a psychiatrist just to get a second opinion. But yeah, she herself was very confident in that diagnosis. So she didn't want to prescribe me meds though,
Well,
and she's just a general practitioner. So, but it sounds like a lot of GPs
Mhm.
are prescribing ADHD meds, and maybe that's part of the
I
problem.
hope not, but maybe, yeah, I don't, or
Yeah.
clinics,
Plus, it
you
sucks too
know.
with the shortage. There's
Mm.
that shortage now on Adderall, and
Mm.
I know a lot of the drugs, and it's like,
Yeah.
God, the people that really need this to survive and function in their daily lives are who's struggling, and that's fucked up.
Yeah, they're not getting their medication because somebody wants to
Yeah.
cheat on a test or, cheat their studying routine so that they can pack more into a shorter period of time or just to get high and escape their
Mhm.
normal reality. If that's what you need to do, then you need to go to a psychologist or counselor to address, the potential depression you're looking at for wanting a stimulant. Because you can tell what people's um what people's mental conditions may be simply by looking at what they're
Yeah.
addicted to. People with depression usually go for uppers and stimulants. People who have anxiety usually go for depressives like
Mhm.
alcohol. So
I
it's
agree with that.
mhm,
However, I think that the majority of people, at least young people, who are abusing Adderall and Ritalin, they're doing it for academic purposes, I'm sure.
Mm.
Because talking to
yeah.
a friend of mine who had tried their wife's ADHD medication to see what it did to a neurotypical person, gave me a little bit of feedback into this and basically described it as being in the matrix, and it's like your brain opens up and you can focus really well, and you can get more information and you can hold more information. And people who are going to really what's the word I'm looking for, um
Hmm.
competitive
Mm.
academic,
Yes.
yeah, they're in a
Yeah,
competitive
that makes
academic
sense.
program. It gives them the
Mhm.
edge. And so I don't think
Mhm,
that it's necessarily depression that's driving some people to use it, maybe the majority of young people to use it. I think that they
mhm.
are using it for performance, as a performance enhancer, just like steroids
Yeah,
for
that makes
athletes.
sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think that the young people using it for academic enhancement are depressed. I probably didn't say that clearly enough. What I meant is if you feel like you need it to like get yourself up and get the
Mhm.
energy, like if you are trying to stimulate um like, you know, just I guess normalcy and escaping your reality of being like, down
Mhm.
lower.
But you don't
Uh,
really need it. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, like you're just kind of apathetic and low energy and possibly not feeling so great, then maybe look into depression instead of taking some a medicine that's not for a condition that possibly could
Yeah.
need to be
Or like,
treated. Um it would
I
just be a
mean, what
better
about
idea
caffeine?
overall.
Why are these guys taking Adderall? What about good old-fashioned
Caffeine.
caffeine? Go get a coffee.
Yeah. Go grab a mocha frappuccino or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, that's all
Extra
we
shot.
had back then. Well, no, I guess
Um
there were pills.
Yeah,
I don't know. I went to a pretty boring college. There were no pills being passed around or anything exciting like that.
that
Yeah,
you
that I
know
know of.
of.
Exactly. I wasn't running with those crowds, but yeah.
I
Yeah, I
heard people
never.
talking about how they could make
Oh,
50 bucks a pill on
wow.
their Adderall. So you get a whole prescription, that's a
Oh
$400
my
bottle right there.
God.
And I've had bottles of my own Adderall when I used to take it stolen.
Wow.
So I know that it's a valuable substance to some people who are looking to sell it. And that's another motivator for some people to fake ADHD. I would bet you is the financial boon of dealing it out pill by pill and grabbing 50 bucks a
Yeah.
pill.
Wow.
Because that's like an extra 400 bucks a month that they could make for doing like
Mm-hmm.
nothing.
Hey, man, I'm already unmedicated. I need to get on this. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Seriously.
I know, right? Like, what is this?
I'm
Could
already
make
used
extra
to a life
money.
un. Yeah, I'm already used to a life
Wow. If
unmedicated.
that's really how
So,
much they sell
yeah,
for, man, I understand why.
it's
It's not
crazy.
Yeah.
exactly the
No,
quickway to
no,
millions,
no.
but
But yeah,
it's, a
for
little extra.
people wanting to make cash on the
Yeah.
side, yeah. Ugh. But just stop doing
Well,
that.
and
It's
it's
not right.
yeah. And here are the statistics on young people who are abusing
Hmm.
stimulants. So in 2020, they found that 4.4% of all high school seniors are abusing stimulant
Hmm.
medications that were not prescribed to
4.4.
them.
Okay.
Um, Yeah. Oh, and that was, I'm sorry, 4.4 was
Mm.
Adderall, 1.7%
Mm.
was Ritalin.
Mm,
And
okay.
of of the people who are abusing prescription medications, uh 60% of them said that they got it from a friend or a
Mm.
relative.
Wow.
So it's, and that's with the youth. Adults is quite a bit lower than young people. That's only 2.1% of adults are
Mhm.
abusing stimulant medications, um,
Mm,
by survey. But the the other thing that I had read is I've read stories about neurotypical kids who are going to the competitive Ivy League universities. They start abusing stimulants to help them study and to get ahead in school. But because they don't have ADHD, it becomes addictive
Mm.
to them. And then the addiction takes over, and a lot of them aren't even able to finish university or anything because of their, they become addicted to it. So
yeah.
when we're sitting there saying, yeah, it turns your brain into a matrix, if you're neurotypical, do not take
Yeah.
that drug, do not take that medicine. Like, it will mess
It's
with you.
dangerous.
It is dangerous, it is
Mhm.
addictive for you. It is not a good idea to try it to see if you can enhance your performance. That
Plus,
it,
something that people don't think of is the fact that it messes with your heart rate and your blood pressure. So, a lot of times, people who are on stimulants for ADHD also need blood pressure medication to
Mm.
stabilize their blood pressure and heart rate. So, um, the person who stole my medication after it was consumed and it all came to light what happened, that person ended up who was quite young, ended up going in for
Mm.
heart problems. They essentially gave themselves at a very early
Whoa.
heart problem,
There you go.
and because they were using it without consulting a doctor or any kind of
Mm.
medical professional. They were taking however much they thought they wanted to take, and which may
Yeah.
have been way too much, because I mean, not the people who take Ritalin and Adderall, they
Mhm.
need different doses. So
right.
there's somebody out there who might need like a huge high dose that would be unheard of for the next person, that would basically like explode their heart.
Mhm.
So, that's another thing. And especially be careful with this if you happen to be on a sports team, because taking stimulant medication and overindulging in that medication when you already play sports is a great way to have like a heart attack or some kind of aneurysm while you're
Oh.
doing your sporting event. And just I've actually, when I was younger and participating in sports, there have been a few stories of athletes that would just keel over
Wow.
right during
Damn. Yep.
games.
Not worth it. Don't do
So,
it.
yeah, and it
Just
sucks.
yeah.
There's
No,
side
not worth
effects
it.
to all
Caffeine is your
medications, and
friend when you
yeah,
need to
they're
focus.
dangerous. Well,
Caffeine is your
but
friend. Yeah,
caffeine in and of itself also has health risks. And
Yeah.
so,
it
like,
does.
it's not even, you basically, what you're doing is you're taking the health risks of caffeine and you're multiplying it by like
Yeah.
1,000. Is, basically that's what the risks are for taking a stimulant medication. And,
Yeah.
um, you know, the one of the biggest reasons that I am unmedicated. I mean, I've talked about not being medicated quite a few times.
Mhm.
I could
Yeah.
go to a psychologist here in Japan. I could seek medication. One of the biggest reasons I don't is because my dad had a massive heart attack when he was
Mhm.
36 years old, and heart disease runs in my family, and it terrifies me of putting myself at any risk for a heightened risk for a heart attack, for something that I don't necessarily need it. Like, I don't need it
Right.
to function. There are people with ADHD that need it to function. Mine is not
Yeah.
that
Where I'm
severe.
at right now, I'm currently
Yeah.
unmedicated. I do have a prescription for Concerta, which is like Ritalin, I think. But since my pharmacy was out, my doctor was talking about doing Focalin. But I've been actually I think I talked about this on here maybe, but I've been microdosing with mushrooms actually, and actually a bunch of different mushrooms. So that's kind of the latest phase I'm in, because especially with the shortage too, my regular pharmacy was actually out of it last month. They called me and they said, we don't know when we're going to get it in again. And so that's when I decided, like, I don't feel like this stuff is helping me enough that I want to take it every day anyway, because even though the side effects weren't really that noticeable, I just couldn't help but think, like, what is this pill doing to me that I'm not aware of? And is it really changing my life that much? Like, no, not really. And maybe I could have played around with getting a higher dose, but I don't know. I just had this thought, like, I want to try a different approach right now. So yeah, I'm currently unmedicated myself. Yeah.
And with me, I have extreme symptoms. My symptoms are very bad, and not only that, I have secondary depression and some measure of secondary anxiety as well. So if I'm not medicated, I get depression and anxiety crashing down all around me all of a sudden.
Yay!
And yay, it's great. It's wonderful times. And I also can't focus. Like, I feel like I basically just, I don't know, it's like retreating into some kind of weird foggy shell where you can't interact with the world in the same way anymore. It's like you can't make decisions as quickly. You can't think things up as quickly. You can't do your work in a timely manner. You get distracted so often, and the frustration builds very, very fast. And for me, that really contributes to the secondary depression, and that gets very bad to where I won't even get up out of bed. So, if I'm medicated, I'm not depressed and I'm not overly anxious, and I can make decisions and go about my life. So it is a huge life-changing thing for me to have medication. And that's why I'm on medication, but also I'm on a non-stimulant medication, mostly because stimulants messed with my heart rate
Yeah.
too much. And even though nobody in my family has heart disease, that we know of, because there were adoptions in my family too. But, we don't know of anybody in my family who has ever died of a
Oh,
heart-related
that's good.
condition. Um, yeah, so maybe it would have been fine, but I just kind of felt like, meh, I'll go with the non-stimulant because it kind of curbs things enough. It gets rid of my depression, and that's really
Yeah.
what I
That's the
need.
thing. Stimulants are no
So,
joke. So yeah, like we were saying, don't be taking them
yeah.
unless
Yeah.
you need them, people.
Yeah, and that's
Well,
interesting too, like, because I'm a walking ball of anxiety. It just never
Mm,
goes away. And
mhm.
but like, I don't have
mm-hmm.
depression, and so I have horrible anxiety. Some days are better than others, but at the same time, it's like I'm almost terrified to take a medication. So because if I feel normal and then I can't take a medication again, how am I
Yeah.
going to function?
I
That's
know, that's the thing.
terrifying.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's anxiety, isn't
Yeah.
it? Talking right
Yeah.
now,
But
like,
it is interesting though.
I told you I'm a walking
Yeah,
ball of
because
anxiety.
when you get on a new medication, I mean, God, I've tried a lot of meds over the years, many antidepressants, and so you go through this time period of getting used to that new medicine and kind of always thinking, like, is that a side effect? Why am I grumpy? Is it from the meds? And then sometimes they do kind of change you a little bit. Like when I tried Vyvanse, I think. Vyvanse,
mhm.
that's the one that's non-stimulant, right? I can't remember. Anyway.
No, Vyvanse is
Oh,
the
Strattera. I'm
long-acting
thinking of
form
Strattera.
of
I had to
Adderall.
go. Yeah, I tried
Yep,
Strattera for a
Strattera.
month and was just miserable. Oh, I think it was like 3 weeks actually. I couldn't do it. Yeah, I couldn't do it
Oh,
anymore.
I'm
So it's like,
sorry.
yeah, you never know how you're going to react to a medication either. So,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Strattera is
yeah.
what
So
I'm
hey,
on.
if it's working
So,
for you, then yeah,
yeah,
everyone's different.
yeah,
Yeah,
works for
but that's
me.
why it's good to see a doctor before you take something. Don't just take something your friend gave you. For all the young people listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, don't
I
do
think
it.
I have kind of a I kind of suspect, and I have absolutely no research to
Garbage
back this up,
science.
guys. So this is true trash panda
Garbage
science. Yeah.
science.
So, garbage science alert. I have a suspicion that Ritalin based medications are targeting more of the uh
Hmm.
oh shit, my brain. Oh man,
Rital-
I'm gonna have a moment now.
like
Um
Ritalin versus Adderall.
the
Oh,
inattentive.
Ritalin's good for inattentive.
Yeah, I think that Ritalin targets more of the inattentive symptoms, and like the inattentive only type
Yeah.
ADHD people seem to bond. Like whenever I've talked to somebody about medications and they're like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
inattentive type." And they're always on it seems like they're
Interesting.
always on Ritalin, and a lot of the people that I talked to who were like, "Oh god, I hated Ritalin. It would just messed me up. I was an
Mm.
emotional mess forever." And those people are either combined type or
Interesting.
hyperactive. And so I kind of suspect that neurological difference might be what the determining factor is, because the way it was explained to me, it's like, oh, it's genetic and it goes along family lines and it depends on your neurology. And when I hear it depends on your neurology, that could mean like anything to me, right? Because I'm not a neuroscientist, I'm not a doctor,
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
know what that means. So I suspect that means that there's a difference between inattentive type and anybody who has the hyperactive component, even
Mm-hmm.
combined types.
Yeah.
I can see where that could be a connection.
Yeah. So
Yay.
garbage science,
I like
yay.
your theory.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I get kind of weird on caffeine sometimes too. Like,
Mm-hmm. It never seems to work for me in the
It's just
morning, you know? Yeah.
it never wakes me up. Caffeine does
Mm-hmm.
not wake me up. It does help me to like chill and focus a
Yeah.
little. Like, I kind of just
yeah.
go,
But it's
okay,
like you're still
I can do this
tired though
thing.
when you're doing
And
it.
exhausted, and it makes me feel like, yeah, it makes me feel
Mm-hmm.
exhausted. Like, the more my caffeine intake is directly in correlation with how
Yeah.
exhausted
Yeah.
I am.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
it's not I'm exhausted so I need caffeine. It's like I need caffeine to focus, and the more caffeine I ingest to focus, the
Wow.
more tired I get.
Interesting. Huh.
Oh my gosh. So what I'm hearing here is that Netflix and chill is like for neurotypicals, but Starbucks and chill is for ADHD people.
Nah, maybe.
But if I have caffeine in the afternoon, if I have any caffeine after like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I will be up late. It does affect me later. It's just kind of, I don't feel jittery or anything, but it just helps me.
Interesting. I can go
Ah,
right to sleep.
Yeah, same.
I drink my coffee and just
yeah,
go, night.
nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like drinking hot water or something like that, except that I can focus a
Mm-hmm.
little bit better.
A little bit better. Yes. Yeah.
Little bit.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and that's like super interesting. And then what was interesting also with talking to my friend today was when they took the stimulant medications, the after, it's like they said, I had a hangover afterwards. It was
Wow.
like a hangover, and
Huh.
they were
What?
extremely exhausted the next day because their
Whoa.
neurotransmitters were firing so
Oh, yeah.
fast that they became like
Mm-hmm.
exhausted.
Their brain was going too
Like,
Oh
fast.
my gosh. So
yeah,
they experienced an ADHD exhaustion like from next
Oh,
day,
yeah.
like when we get really really productive and we do
Yeah.
8 billion things in one day,
Yeah,
and
it
then
starts
the
to
next
fall
day
out
it's
from
always a
that. Yeah.
crash.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. The
boomer
Boomer
bust,
experience the
baby,
bust.
boomer
That's
crash.
right.
bust.
Oh, dang it. So, well, that
Yeah,
that must have been a cool insight into ADHD for that
Mm-hmm.
neurotypical person. Like,
yeah. If yeah, but it's like, when they said that, I was like, you got you got a hangover.
Yeah.
I know,
Really?
right?
Like, But I guess that would be the cycle where you would want to take it again because you're
Yeah, for
tired,
people who
right?
are getting,
If you're
Right, so you
and that
need
becomes
to
yep,
a pattern of
for people who get
addiction.
hooked on it.
yeah,
That makes so much sense.
exactly.
Yeah.
When I talk to somebody who is neurotypical and they took, Adderall just to see what it would do to them, they didn't mention the hangover, like, quality at the end, but they did mention that they felt like they could do anything for hours, like the world was their oyster, and they all of a sudden had a million ways that they could make it
Wow.
in the world or whatever, and they were saying that, like, their mind just opened up like a book, and it was like the movie, um,
Mm-hmm.
Limitless,
Uh,
like, which I think is about Adderall use in neurotypicals or stimulant use in neurotypicals anyway, and, um and he was just saying it was insane. It was like I had a supercharged brain and I was super intelligent and I just knew all the right things to do and it was crazy. And I didn't want that to go away. So when I felt the effects start to wear off, it gave me panic attacks and I didn't know what to do because I felt like it was being
Whoa.
taken away. Something was being taken away from me. Like it was really interesting to hear that. And I was
That's
just like,
wild.
huh. So like, they're just retreating back, like, back
Mm-hmm.
into normalcy for anybody else, but for us, it would be, like, high
Yeah,
functioning.
yeah. You know how it feels when you're in that flow state, you're focused on something that you're doing, you're accomplishing it, you're like, man, this is great, everything's working out. Yeah, maybe that's what it feels like. And then you come down from that and it's like, I don't feel like doing
Yeah,
anything now.
like, "Ah,
Yeah,
shit, I'm
no.
my old self
Oh,
again."
yep, not that
yeah,
person.
but like, they return to their self, but then, it's the same thing as my friend who's a doctor was saying. It's like methamphetamine. If you take a lot of methamphetamines, you get meth washout, and they're completely,
Oh.
you know, he said obtunded, which is such a big word, but like basically you're dull and you lack all energy,
Oh,
or barely able to move. And he said, I see a lot of that in City
interesting.
Hospital. And
Ooh.
so basically it's a what a neurotypical person would feel taking an ADHD stimulant drug is a milder form of what
Damn,
methamphetamines will do
that's
to you.
interesting.
Wow. And after
Yeah,
you take meth, I heard that it can take years for your brain chemistry to
Oh, I wonder
return
if
to
it's.
normal
if it
because
ever,
it
if
That's why they
ever,
say meth,
it
not
if
even
ever.
yeah,
once.
because it messes with
Yeah.
not even once.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, once is enough for the vast majority of people who take it. So, yeah, it's really rare to hear of somebody, and I have heard of them who are like, "Yeah, I tried it once, didn't like it, never did it
Wow.
again." Just like, really? Holy crap! Like, so, but it's really rare. So
It's a
don't think
Yeah.
you're
unicorn.
going to be the exception. Yeah. But what can we tell neurotypicals out there who are like, I really need this to study. I really have to pass my exams. I really can't function. I don't feel like I can function
Oh.
without this. What do we tell
That
those people?
is the perfect segue into the
Mm.
next segment, which is talking
Fantastic.
about the impact on individuals with ADHD. It's
Ah,
not about you, sister and brother. It's not about you getting a good grade. Let's talk about what those actions, what you doing that, does to the people who actually have ADHD and
Yeah,
require these
not cool,
medications
man.
to
Hmm.
function.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
by
So,
faking your by faking having ADHD, by going in and seeking medications, you are creating a stigmatization, because now if you are found out that you are just seeking medication, it creates a negative stigma against people who are going for treatment
Yeah.
for ADHD, and everybody becomes suspect. Now, there is it we are underdiagnosed. ADHD is chronically
Yeah.
underdiagnosed, especially in older
Yeah.
adult females. And so
mhm.
by going and seeking medications, when people who actually are from their heart seeking answers for their life and seeking a diagnosis, you're creating a stigma, whereas doctors don't even want to start, they don't even want to deal with
Yeah,
ADHD
I
anymore.
know. It's true.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the vibe I've gotten from a lot of doctors is kind of like, oh, ADHD, that's just a fad. Let's just talk about your depression, you know? They don't want to. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, haven't I
God.
heard that. Sheesh. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard those exact words. Let's talk about your PTSD instead.
Yeah,
Let's
they
talk
just
about
brush
your
it off.
depression instead. And I'm just like, no, why don't we talk about my ADHD? Because I'm
Yes,
pretty
it was
sure
my doctor that
I have it.
finally said, I think your depression is from your ADHD. I think that's the root there, the root problem. And it's like, oh, it all makes sense now. Yep.
Yeah. But if you take that feeling after all of the Adderall wears off and you're exhausted and you can't make decisions and you can't function like you normally would and you just feel like you're bogged down and you just if only you had
Yeah.
something to pick you back up again. Well,
Yeah.
that's how we feel every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day of an ADHD person's life is filled with frustration,
Mm-hmm.
brain fog, exhaustion, um, the
Executive
inability to make
dysfunction.
decisions,
Yep.
restlessness, which is weird because you're restless, but you're also exhausted. So it's very uncomfortable. You might get body pains from that, from the combination of physical restlessness and
Oh,
also
that is the
mental and
worst
physical
feeling
exhaustion.
when you're like that.
And
It's torture.
yeah, yeah, it is. It is. It feels it's a really uncomfortable place to be, especially when the world expects you not to be that way. Because we're not expected to have
Yeah.
ADHD symptoms, even though we have them. We're expected to be just like you when you neurotypicals normally function
Mm-hmm.
every day without Adderall. That's what we're expected to be like. But instead, we're like the version of you that happens after you've come down from Adderall and you're
Mm-hmm.
exhausted and feeling like crap. So please, please do not fake ADHD because it's taking medication away from people who really need it, who are like this all the time. But also, what can you do to prevent even having to take it? Most people who are young and looking for help, they're looking for study help. So if you have tutoring programs that you can take advantage of, for many colleges have tutoring centers that are available for free for their students. You can just go in, say, I'm having trouble with math. I'm having trouble with my English or my literature or my psychology or whatever it is, and they will tutor you for free. Spend the extra time and do the work instead of just seeking a pill that can help you do it
Mm-hmm.
all at the last minute. Doing it all at the last minute isn't a good idea anyway, because those pieces of facts that you need to pass your tests, they don't stick around in your brain very long when you've only learned them for a week. They stick around in your brain when you practice using them over time, which is why college courses and high school and any schooling is set up to evolve over years of time, because they know that information there has to be a foundation laid, and then the next layer, and then the next layer, and then the next layer, and it's a building process. It's the process of growth, and you have to be patient with growth in order for growth to really happen. Otherwise, your growth becomes stunted. And like if you plant carrot seeds in a container that's too small, the carrots will be all twisted and forked and they're weird. And people, pull them up and laugh at them and they're like, look at this weird looking carrot. Well, you'll turn into a
Yeah.
weird looking carrot if if you just try. Like, that's the equivalent of what your educational experience will be if you're relying on stimulant medications and
Mm-hmm.
last minute
It's
studying.
so it's
Cramming
so
is what they usually
tempting. I
call
think
that, I
it's just
believe.
human nature to look for those shortcuts in life, you know? And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
Yeah, but
that
life doesn't have
yes,
shortcuts for
exactly.
real.
That's one
There aren't
thing that
shortcuts.
I've learned is like, all good things require time, investment, growth, hard work, and there are no shortcuts, there are no magic pills, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because the pills that you guys think are magic actually have a
Yeah.
lot of consequences attached to them in the form of, potential heart problems or, making it harder for somebody else to get their
Yeah. I
medication that
mean,
they
it's
legitimately
it's
need.
a
None of that
morality issue
feels
there
good.
too, like it's icky. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It's unethical. And you can, if you are
Mhm.
found using that kind of drug in any academic institution, you are at
Yeah.
risk of being kicked out.
Mhm.
That's true. Yeah, that is also true. There are rules that conflict with this
Mhm.
behavior. So, you get caught, you could get ejected from your college or university, which would really stink because how many thousands of dollars have you invested in your
Yeah.
education only for it to
And
be
this
cut
sucks
short?
for the
Um,
kids in college that
yeah,
do have ADHD and do have to take Adderall every day. Like, man, that they've got an uphill battle already. Now they have to deal with the stigma of taking that medicine, and you know, uh
yeah, yeah, because people side eye
yeah,
you and go, "Oh
yeah,
yeah, I bet
yeah.
you really need that medication, huh?" Like, it's when I can always tell when I'm dealing with somebody
Mhm.
who's suspicious like that because they just approach you differently, like you're untrustworthy because you have a mental health condition and a brain difference that requires medication. It's
Mhm.
just it's terrible, but if people keep abusing the system and abusing the medication as a result, then it's this stigma
Yep.
is going to worsen and, possibly result in legislation being passed because, other people will get sick of those people who are trying to get ahead just by abusing
Mhm.
stimulant medication. So, just as legislation was passed to limit it, it's a Schedule C
Mhm.
controlled substance. So, there are heavy penalties for selling it or possessing it or taking it when you are not prescribed that medication. And it is hell if God for God help you if you lose your bottle of medication.
Yeah.
You will not be able to get it replaced. Like it's not like you could go to your doctor and be like, or the pharmacy and say, "I accidentally lost my allergy medication. Could I get a replacement bottle?"
Yeah.
They won't do
With
that
controlled
with
substances.
things like
But which
Ritalin and
it's
Adderall.
probably something that happens all
Um,
the time though, because if you have ADHD, you're always losing shit. So,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then, too
uh,
bad for you. So sad. You go without your medication until the next month when you can refill it again. It's just like pain
yeah.
medications.
It's a frustrating
Yeah.
situation.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm tired of seeing it in the news. I'm tired of seeing documentaries made where physicians are they're putting, hidden cameras on physicians who are prescribing ADHD medications and saying, "Look, it's overprescribed" and things like that. No, it isn't. We have a shortage of it, and people who don't need it should
Mhm.
not be using it.
Yeah.
It's an ethical
Mhm.
issue.
It is an ethical issue, especially because that entire problem is rooted in the
Oh, it's
hatred of
ableism.
people with
Yeah.
disabilities to begin with. So, yeah, absolutely. It is
I agree.
ableism. And it's really ableist to assume that you have the right to this medication when you don't have the underlying
Mhm.
neurology to support it.
Yep.
So if you are going out there and saying, I feel entitled to use this simply because
Mhm.
it helps me out on my
No.
homework,
Not okay.
no, 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 baby girl. You need to realign
Yep.
your thinking process because the rest of us here who do have ADHD and we're actually a pretty small percentage of the world population. I mean,
Yes.
the people who really need this are few and far between. So if a doctor's office has 20% of their clientele as ADHD people, I could see how that would be raising red flags when only 6% of the world
Mhm.
population has ADHD.
And
you
of
know,
that 6% of the
theoretically.
world with ADHD, not
Yeah.
everybody
Hmm.
needs medication. I don't necessarily feel like I
Hmm.
need medication. I can function. Sometimes it's hard,
Hmm.
but I can
Hmm.
function without it. And so out of that 6%, not everybody needs it, but the people who
Yeah.
do need it
Right.
really
Exactly.
need it.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Like I can tell you,
Yeah.
I really need
I'm
that
so glad
stuff.
that it
Like
helps you that much.
it would be, yeah, I am too, because it was so frustrating, and I had gotten to a, a kind of depression that was so low. It was pretty bad, and I knew I needed help, and I, went in for counseling, and it just wasn't like, some people can counsel themselves out of depression, but when you have depression as a secondary to
Hmm.
ADHD, that problem's not going to go away. It's not a matter of just getting into a better headspace or retraining your thought process to think kinder thoughts. You can't retrain your brain you know, to perform better
Yeah, it
at
Create
just
the
kind
better
of
level that
chemicals.
evolves.
ADHD.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't train your brain
Yeah.
to burp out more dopamine. You just
No.
can't.
Well, I mean, your body makes enough dopamine. The problem is you don't have the neurotransmitters to get the dopamine.
Oh,
So it's
yeah.
not like you can.
Sorry, I had it backwards.
It's okay. But yeah, it's not like you can create new neural transmitters in your brain and get all that dopamine.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I'm
No,
No.
that's
hopeful
not how
with
it
the
works.
research coming out with psychedelics, and psilocybin. It does
Yeah.
seem like there's some evidence that it might help with, regenerating neurons and making new neural pathways. Yeah,
Yeah, I've
it's
read a
fascinating.
lot
Mhm.
of yeah, I've read a lot of really
Yeah.
fascinating studies on it. So that is definitely something. But, you know, we want to get into a world, we 6% of the population has ADHD that's diagnosed.
Hmm.
We do not know undiagnosed, and we don't know how many of
Mhm.
those diagnosed are actually have ADHD. That's, it's a statistic, and there's not you can't be
Hmm.
100% sure of a statistic. However,
Mhm.
what we do know is that ADHD is a thing. It is, you can see it on MRIs. You can there's actual brain chemistry that you can read. There are brain studies that you can do.
It's
It's not
real.
a fake. It's not a fake thing. It's real. And
Mhm.
how are we going to deal with the fact that there is a significant part of the population, that has
Hmm.
this, and what are we going to do as a society to make ADHD, neurodivergent people and neurotypical people, how are we going to work this out to be able to like come together and work as a
I
successful
don't know, man.
society, you know?
Yeah. Because society needs
Yeah.
ADHD people. We're all the ones working in the hospitals and the police departments
Hmm.
and the ambulances, and we're the ones with the energy to keep going, going, going. We come up with creative
That's
solutions
right.
in times of crisis. We are excellent business leaders. Some of the most amazing business
Hmm.
leaders in the world have ADHD. And the world needs us. We are a vital piece of the picture for society. We come up with innovative
Yep.
ideas and technology, and we need to be able to function in the world so that we can keep creating all of those awesome things for everybody else.
Yeah.
So, if our
Hmm.
medication is being fucked with by people
Yeah.
who just want to get an A, just because they didn't take the time to study properly for the rest of the year. Come on, guys. Let's work this out. Let's find a different way for neurotypicals to succeed without
Yeah.
taking medication that's not meant for them, and potentially becoming addicted, and potentially having heart problems, and potentially changing the entire course of their lives over one
Not worth it.
class outcome. So, not worth it. So, if you know somebody who is not who is taking ADHD medication, but not for the right reasons. Just it's
Mhm.
hard to have the talk with them, but I think we need more ADHD people to step up and say, "Hey, I know that you really want to succeed, and I know that you're competitive, and I know that, that this is important to you, but my medication is important to me, and I could lose that
Yeah.
if more people keep abusing that." If people come at it from an empathetic point of view where you're identifying with the needs of that person, you know that they want to be good at what they're doing, but please, you know, consider the outcome for your friend who really
Mhm.
needs that medication just to function. Like, we need to start talking about this face to face with people, not over Twitter, not over Facebook, but real conversations, heartfelt, face to face, because people need to know that you're not mad at them, you don't hate them, you don't wish them ill because they're doing what they're doing, but at the
Right.
same time, it's
They're adding to a
creating a
big
problem.
problem.
So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, and the more personal we can make these conversations, the better, because nobody likes to be sniped at in 120 words over Twitter, or, gone off on
Mhm.
and dogpiled over Facebook. Nobody responds to that very well. I mean, I think we all, or at least I learned that during the Trump era, where people were dogpiling on each other online and calling it social justice
No.
activism or whatever,
Nobody's
social
listening.
justice
They don't listen to
warriors,
that. They
you
don't
know,
receive that
it
well.
just,
Mhm.
yeah. At first, it might have worked at first in a few situations, but over time, it just became a barrage of hatred and an excuse to behave poorly
Yep.
when you normally wouldn't. so,
So,
um, so let's reverse that Trump era hatred train and get on a better track, personalize these things from the heart, and we'll just see where it goes. We'll see if we can
yep.
work together to come up with those solutions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're out there listening, thank you. We really appreciate you. I wish I could give you a high five, but I'd just be slapping this microphone and
Yep.
it sounds like this. So so it's, which probably sounds stupid. I don't know. Annette's gonna tell me later once she has to edit it out.
Thanks for
Uh,
listening,
but
everyone.
but thank you for listening. Big verbal hug, yay,
Basiltov.
and Basiltov.
Basiltov.